why wasn't the Jesus guy in it? He seemed way more interesting. That guy seemed he had Riz, like you're saying.
He did have Riz. He did have Riz. Yeah, he literally had Riz.
It's time again for a new arc here on Foreplay. And what does that mean? This time, it means Sword-and-Sandal epics, a Hollywood classic, particularly from the era of the 50s and 60s. Now, what does this mean? Sometimes it means Bible stories. Sometimes it means
that it does.
Ancient Roman stories. Sometimes, as in the case of our first film, Ben-Hur, it means both of those things simultaneously. We will be starting with Ben-Hur today. We will then be proceeding next week on to Spartacus from Kubrick. We will then, after that, skip forward many, many decades to the Troy director's cut. And then we will finish with Gladiator 1/Gladiator 2 combined into one film, for one show, I should say. And these are long, guys, like 3 hours plus, all of them.
On that note, I watched the Gladiator 2 trailer today. When I was getting ready for the show, man, does it look like it's gonna But you know the old saying, right? When Ridley Scott makes a movie, the gods toss a coin, right? And it's looking like it's tails, is all I'm saying. I did not enjoy the trailer whatsoever, but you're pleasantly surprised Denzel Washington's in it. I mean, you know that there's signs of quality in the casting. But yeah, I saw the CGI rhino and the CGI baboon fight, and I was like, I don't know, boys, buckle up. Because obviously, following in the footsteps of the first is going to be, one
of the most universally acclaimed films and
just a crazy thing to do. And then obviously he is coming off the back of that Napoleon movie where it was like Napoleon was blowing up the pyramids or something. So I don't know.
I liked aspects of that Napoleon movie.
That is also why I do think this arc is like a good idea as well, especially because it's obviously centered around the idea of Gladiator. Because I do think Gladiator has taken that status now as like, have you ever met anyone who doesn't like that film? Doesn't everyone enjoy Gladiator? I feel like it's like the universal film of our age in some way,
Yeah. I mean, definitely. I will say, I wasn't really enamored with it when I saw it in the cinema the first time, but I did. I was there with my missus at the time, who she didn't like it, and so you know what it's like when you're watching a movie with someone that's not enjoying the movie.
Offshore.
Yeah. So it was kind of like that, and then as I told you, when we set this arc up, I used to watch that on VHS to get fucking primed to go out for a night of heavy drinking and a fucking and a punch up. You know what I mean? So it is just a great movie. I mean, all the performances are on point and all that, and really, I mean, I'd say this, it's a way to tee us off for the Ben-Hur discussion. I think probably out of all of the movies on this list, and I will say I haven't watched Troy in a while. But I will say probably out of all of the movies on this list, it might be the one that absolutely has the best handle on character arcs, pacing, and spectacle, like all blended together. Or, on the say that's the 3-point triangle. That's the most balanced one of all of the movies, probably on the arc, is Gladiator. Because as I found out with Ben-Hur, man alive, you're a long way from the chariot scene. Holy shit!
No, by the way, that's
totally
probably where we should start. That's where we should start with this discussion. This isn't even just a normal long film. This is essentially 2.5 films long or something. If you think about the modern day, so one thing I want to ask at the beginning, because one thing about this you can't escape is a film of its time. This is quite clearly a film where they decided we are going to have almost unlimited ambition, and there are no limits. Literally, there isn't some guy coming in doing all the modern day cynical stuff you hear about. Hey, the focus group didn't really appeal to scene 2, so can we trim that down? And then also, we have to hit a nice, a healthy 90 to 100 minute. This is a 3 hour 40 minutes film, and literally it's not the case it's because what's funny is one thing that'll blow your mind if you've never seen this film is the first half of the film there are absolutely scenes where they just skip entire decades and years. The reason the film is 3 hours 40 minutes long is every scene where two people talk is about 10 times longer than a modern day edit would ever be. be. Like people
Oh,
literally
sure.
just do like wistful looks at someone and then like wait and then pause and take in what he said, and actually like real life basically. Like it's such an alien pacing if you're only used to like modern, like, you know, MTV smash cut type and Aronofsky type. That this will be a really alien experience. But I actually think if you can settle into it, because that's the key thing, you've got to sort of like, you've not got to want to rush forwards in the story. You've got to like let the atmosphere soak in, because if you can do that, it's a very enjoyable film. But I do think it's going to blow people's minds how long this film is. It's really long.
You love this man?
I will learn to love him.
Not only that, but I think what's interesting about Ben-Hur, and we talk about it being part of, you know, a piece of its time in 1959, is that it includes aspects that if you haven't watched movies this era, you might not be aware of, such as starting with an overture for 5 minutes, like you might hear at a symphony or at an opera, right, where you get all of the themes and the music. This is treated as you would treat a huge stage performance. By having the overture, it's like, this is a fucking piece of art, and you will respect it as a piece of art. Here's the music up front with just it saying overture on your screen. It has an intermission, obviously, because people needed to pee in the 3 hours and 40 minutes that this song is, or that this this film is, right? And those aspects to it make it like a destination experience for viewers, right? It's something culturally epic that is being built here. It's a new year, and that means it's time to spice up your grooming routine with Mando. Don't smell like the people of the ancient world. Don't smell like Ben-Hur. Instead, smell masculine and fresh. With Mando's starter pack, Mando offers a variety of men's grooming products, including deodorants, body washes, bar soaps, and none of them are antiperspirants or have aluminum. Instead, they use mandelic acid to stop the body odor before it starts. They also have a variety of very manly scents. My personal favorite is their Clover Woods, but you might like their Mount Fuji or Bourbon Leather, depending on your tastes. And if you guys want to try Mando out, the starter pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, which is a kind of lotion-like deodorant that you can rub into your armpits or your feet or anywhere where body odor develops. I've actually switched entirely to using the cream tube deodorant because I find it easier and more convenient. Has been a big surprise for me. And you can get 2 free products of your choice, like a mini body wash or deodorant wipes. Those deodorant wipes are great if you start to have a little funk and you don't have the time to take a shower. If you're out camping, if you've been out all day and you want to freshen up before your evening, they really do the job. I like them a lot. And you guys get free shipping. As a special for our listeners, new customers get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code. That equates to over 40% off your starter pack. Use code FOREPLAY, all one word, at shopmando.com. That's code FOREPLAY, FOURPLAY, at shopmando.com. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. As always, the best way to support Foreplay and shows at Last Free Nation is to support our sponsors. Thank you very much to Mando. You guys will enjoy that starter pack. Now, back to Ben-Hur.
It's an interesting nod because I was looking up the history of Ben-Hur, and obviously it's an adaptation of an 1880 novel called Ben-Hur, A Tale of the Christ. I'll talk about the relevance of the novel a little bit later on, but then by 1899 they have adapted this into these big Broadway live theater acts where the chariot scenes are done by having horses run on treadmills on a stage. And so people would go to see the live production, and they're playing the music while everyone's getting settled in. You do all the dialogue, because essentially what this really is this movie is a revenge movie that then is bookended by the teachings of Christ and how forgiveness is more
It's
important.
almost like they blended two films together, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. If you take that out,
it's really it's a Roman revenge movie that has a Jewish revenge movie inside of it when you think about it.
Sure, also, but
no,
I mean,
but that is weird though, Monty. Like I was even going to say this. This is one thing I don't think I've ever heard anyone bring up about this movie. Think about it for a second, guys. It's presented as a movie for like Jewish or Israeli people, but the actual like premise of the film is you were wrong spiritually and Jesus is real. Like it's actually it's got to be one of the weirdest like premises for a film I've ever seen, because you identify with Judah Ben-Hur, but then if all the shit about Jesus, which is laid into it, which is, by the way, in its own way, is very like I would say it's actually very startling. It has like quite a powerful effect. I would say some of the scenes are actually way more like over the top than I remember, but like it actually has a very weird sort of cosmology, this film, in a way, because it's trying to take both sides at the same time in a weird sense, if you know what I mean.
Well, where it differs to say something like the Passion of the Christ is, the Passion of the Christ was pretty, it got criticized quite heavily at the time for, anti-Semitic depictions. It's like I said to you before we started hitting record. When I came into this movie, right, what you have to remember about historical epics in the, the 50s and 60s, some of the 70s too, you have to just brace yourself for what am I going to see first. Will it be anti-Semitism? Will it be racism? Will it be blackface? There's going to be something that's going to be like so offensive to kind of modern sensibilities. The one thing I will say is there's nothing like mean-spirited towards the people of Judea, the Jewish people, in this movie. And actually I like the way that it tells Ben-Hur's story. It just is an adjacency to the tale of the Christ. I mean, it's like, keep in mind, there's that scene, right, where like Jesus is doing the Sermon on the Mount. Ben-Hur's about to fuck off. That's like missing. You know what I mean?
It is
That's
funny because if you know the context, but I actually really like that scene because obviously people are going there to see the Sermon on the Mount, which is clearly, maybe the most important part outside of the Passion of the New Testament, right? The most important part of, Jesus being alive and teaching, let's put it that way. And we as viewers understand what's going on, but to Ben-Hur, it's just another fucking day. And I think this is just true about, because you have to remember what it was like at the time for Jesus and the people there, because to the Romans, Jesus was just a weird Jewish cultist, man. He was walking around saying he was the Messiah and shit. Like, what do you do with this? He's causing problems. And if you guys want to do more research on this, I would suggest that you read some of Elaine Pagel's books on these subjects. She's a Princeton scholar who goes back and, she reads all of the original texts from this period. She's like a biblical historian, and she actually has some mega stuff on how the Romans were actually treated, why she thinks the Bible was formulated and these stories were told the way they were, and kind of trying to put herself in the shoes of the people at the time. And I think this movie actually is pretty successful in doing that because people are just living their lives, man, and some of them are into this teaching, and Ben-Hur's just there like, I don't know what the fuck's going on. I got other stuff to do.
why I laughed at the scene is because it's like you said, it's literally the Sermon on the Mount, right? And like it's sort of like saying, that Jeff Buckley, he has got a great voice, but I'm sure he's never going to go swimming. Or like, Kurt Cobain, he's never going to marry a bad woman. It'll all be fine. I have plenty of time to see those
like,
guys.
you know what?
They're in their 20s.
I'll catch him in 95. You know what? Yeah. This tour's up for me. I'll wait till it percolates.
You know what I mean? He's like literally walking away from and of course,
let me know if that sermon's any good. I'll come to the next one.
It does have the ramification, of course. By the end of the movie, he goes off, does his revenge, all of that stuff, comes back, and he's like, right, well, I will listen to that rabbi you've told me so much about. Oh, that blind dude's just like, oh no, they're crucifying him today, mate. You missed the window on that one, mate. So there is kind of like an almost comedic unfortunate to it. But I will say, I think I agree with Duncan. I think the way they sort of the Christ elements right up until the end, it's very light touch. It's not like I'd forgotten that the prologue is literally the fucking nativity. By the way, that's how you know you're buckling up for a historical epic.
Yeah, for sure.
The pre-credit sequence is the birth of Christ, guys. So I don't know. Like, get ready. Get fucking ready for 3 hours and 40 minutes. But yeah, it's like I thought it was a pretty light touch. I mean, it's not like it doesn't really hit you over the head until the end when everyone's leprosy gets cleared for some reason. But I liked it. I mean, listen, I'd forgotten about the more kind of heartwarming aspects of it. This is kind of like the It's a Wonderful Life of historical epics in a way. You know what I mean? It is. It's got this weird,
with maybe more
affirming
violence.
message at the end. Yeah, with what's still one of the best action scenes ever
great.
filmed
Yeah.
in any medium of cinema ever. And I mean, listen, it does have some good spectacles, just not as many as I remember. But I have to say as well, I don't think it dragged. There was never a point, even in 3 hours and 40 minutes, where I was hovering for the fucking. I'll just skip the next 10. Yeah, there wasn't anything like that, even if the pacing is slow.
And going back to how it's from its period, we have to talk about the history of film and what was going on in this time period in Hollywood, because Ben-Hur is such an immense undertaking in order to create this movie in the first place, as you can see by using your eyeballs and looking at the spectacle of this thing, which is just ridiculous. When this movie was made, it was the most expensive movie ever made with the largest sets ever made. And it ended up being a massive financial success. So in 59, they made this for $15 million, but they earned like $150 million back onto it. So it is actually, especially adjusted for inflation, one of the most successful movies in cinema history.
They're
right?
said to have spent a lot more as well, if you factor in, because they absolutely hammered the marketing on this.
Yes.
I mean, they spent millions on that too. And it was like that, the interesting detail is MGM, if this movie had flopped, they probably go under. Especially because they spent so much over this. I mean, pre-production started like 5 years, I want to say, I think it was, before they even got around starting to film it. I mean, like, just mad details, like the chariot scene, right? Get this. For every 1 foot of film they kept in the movie, they shot 263 foot of film. And this is a scene that's
more and more scenes of the same thing.
Well, because what they did is they did it for real. They ran the horses all day.
They drove around in cars
every day. Yeah, and they just kept filming it because this was about living up to that live show that people associated back in the 1890s and beyond. That when you went to Ben-Hur, you got a fucking spectacle. And so that was the promise of this movie. And it's really crazy for a movie that's like so slow and has so much dialogue. But ultimately, the way that the stage play was always designed was we build up to the race at the end. Again, as you joked before we went live, kind of like Grease or a million 1950s like movies. Like, it's about two dudes who are in two gangs. They don't fucking jibe with each other. Maybe they used to be friends. And then they have a race at the end to settle it. I mean, Ben-Hur kind of is that. And but anyway, yeah, I mean, like, in terms of the spending, Christopher, I'll bounce it back to you. The spending on this movie was insane, and MGM, if it hadn't have succeeded, if anything had gone wrong with this movie, I mean, if it had ended up in post-production hell, which it could have done, the producer, I think, died. Sam Zimbalist or whatever, I think, died. He had a heart attack before it was out. It's like, if anything had gone wrong, there probably isn't an MGM today making movies.
Yeah, and the sets too, guys, were built, and certainly they do some painted backgrounds in this, like you can see it, but it's actually, the painted backgrounds are really well done, and they're super well integrated into the sets, but it's also the tens of thousands of extras, all the costumes they had to make, the Roman soldiers' armor. It is... Honestly, when you watch this, you realize how shit CGI is, because there's no way computers can duplicate the sheer spectacular imagery that is present in this film. It is
even when your eyes get tricked by CGI. Unless it's really, really good, you never get the actual feeling that there is a physical thing, though. You have like and a scene like this, your brain immediately can compute that's a giant set with those are all real people, those are all real animals. Somehow it does hit harder, even if it might not even look as good as CGI. I agree, Monty. I also thought, by the way, to touch back on that thing Richard was saying about the Christ element, which, by the way, I completely forgot was even in this film. I didn't even know that was like the subtitle of the film, bro. Like, I remember all the Ben-Hur parts and the chariot fights and his story, but when I watched it, I was amazed by how much it was. I thought the same thing when I saw the intro, I was like, how much of this is in this? One thing I actually thought was interesting, I tried to actually put myself in the position of if I was watching this in 1959. First of all, I don't think people can appreciate, think about how many people were actually like properly Christian at the time in 1959. This would be incredibly powerful to see on a screen. It's actually one of the things I often try to remind myself of. If you ever go to like an old church from like the medieval period in England or something, it's like the people who go there who are peasants would never have seen colored glass or heard music from an organ. That would be like incredibly powerful artistic experience, like mystical almost. So first of all, I imagine this movie would have hit super hard if you were Christian. And then also, I actually thought one thing, I wondered what Monty would think of this. I actually thought, even though it might be jarring to like a secular modern kid now watching it, you know, like the scene, for example, where Jesus does like give him the drink of water when he's like dying in the desert or whatever, right? That the way that he responds, even though remember, he himself is like actually like a Jewish character and obviously he isn't Christian in any way. You know, the way Ben-Hur reacts as if like he can just intuitively sense that this is like Jesus. That is, if people don't know how it's presented in the Bible. The whole thing that's interesting in the Bible, this is what I think often gets lost to modern day people. It's not the idea that Jesus comes up to you and goes, right, here are the following proofs as to why I'm Jesus. You're supposed to, because he is supposed to be like God, you're supposed to just intuitively know when you see him, like, oh shit, that's why people literally in the Bible just like fall on their knees. There's even mad ones where
he's got the vibes,
like
man.
He's got the vibe. He's got that riz.
As you see in this film, even like Roman people who obviously have zero conception of his religious worldview are just responded to him sort of like, oh shit, or like they're awestruck by
centurion.
That aspect actually is very well comes across on screen here. Actually, does the joke is Jesus doesn't really appear in the movie; he's always slightly off screen.
One thing I wanted to see if you noticed,
he has a presence though. Yeah,
there was one thing I wanted to see if you noticed, and they actually used a digital effect, and it was at the end when Pontius Pilate is sentencing Christ to death. And they obscure his face with a fake shadow. I wanted to see if you picked up on that.
It's like I said, though, I did notice they intentionally sort of like, he's not really in the film, but like his presence can be felt throughout the whole film.
Well, he was also played by an opera singer that they took just for the looks. It was his only film role. That he was credited for, and he obviously has no dialogue in the movie. So there's kind of an interesting mystique about the guy. But yeah, I mean, the way it's shot is great. I mean, I suppose maybe for modern sensibilities, you know, we're all super cool atheists and stuff now, aren't we? But like, so for like modern sensibilities, the bit where Heston is drinking the water, and then, you know, like he just feels sort of compelled to just like touch his hand a little bit. Like, there's probably some people that are going to find that like a little bit cheesy, but I think how else would you present like you're just blown away? And keep in mind as well, think about everything Ben-Hur has done in his life, right? His life has been insane. He's been in the galley of a boat. He's been in a naval battle. He's been shipwrecked. He's worked his way up through the echelons of Roman society to become adopted by a consul of Rome, then gone back to Judea, become a champion chariot fucking raider. He's hanging out with Arab horse breeders. And then when he sees Christ again, he immediately recognizes him. That's the dude who gave me the water when I was thirsty. Which, you know, look, it's an allegory, a metaphor, whatever the fuck you want to call it, you know, in the Bible. That's one of their go-tos, right? The idea of being spiritually thirsty, but Christ nourishes you and you will never be thirsty ever again. So, you know, that's kind of an interesting recurring little motif throughout the film. Like, you know, when they come off the shipwreck and the consul presents the water to him first out of gratitude for saving his life. You know, there's like little things like that throughout. But I mean, listen, I liked all the Jesus stuff. I liked it. I like the fact as well, in a mirror of the scene, when Charlton Heston tried to give him water, Heston not having the riz of Jesus Christ, he just gets kicked in the head by a centurion. You're not giving him no water. I'm not blown away and awestruck by you, Charlton Heston. Get the fuck off. And then they crucified him, and then he cured leprosy.
I did like his post-death leprosy cure. That was that was my favorite.
Well, if anything, that's what I would love to see. I'd love to see the young Zuma kid who doesn't know either religion or the history of this sort of film, who just goes, why wasn't the Jesus guy in it? He seemed way more interesting. That guy seemed he had Riz, like you're saying.
He did have Riz. He did have Riz. Yeah, he literally had Riz.
He was way more interesting than those lepers. Why wasn't Jesus in it?
Here's the thing as well. Like, I know for a fact that a bunch of people watching this podcast have been watching our content for a while. They'll remember when me and Duncan used to do By the Numbers, and like By the Numbers was such an eclectic, insane podcast, considering it was meant to be about Counter-Strike.
Oh, of course.
One of the things that would always come up would just be the Bible. We would always be talking about the Bible metaphors, Bible references, actual Bible history, and so it was sort of a running joke, like Bible the Numbers, Bible study with Duncan Torrance Shields. But like, I know there's going to be some people watching this who think we fully Trojan horse this, like Swords and Sandals. It's just a lovely story about Jesus Christ curing leprosy.
That's the thing is, like, technically the 10 Commandments, which came out before this film with Charlton Heston, is also a Sword and Sandals movie. Like the religious movies of this era do fall under this purview of Sword and Sandals.
It's true. But I will say, when we put this on the list, I for some reason just remembered this having way more swords, less sandals, and a lot less Jesus. I mean, I will say that. That was how I just remember the fucking Welsh guy in brownface. Just like talking about horse breeding. He's great.
And if I had a voice to sing, I would sing you the psalm of horses. I tell you, no other animal has descended so unscathed from the first innocent forming of the world.
Like, those are the bits that I remembered. I mean, and this was one of these movies, again, like, you know, I've talked about this before on the show, where I used to watch, when I used to go around to my grandparents' house, like every Sunday, we would walk down, there was like a VHS store, you know, down the road, and we would walk down there, me and my grandma, sometimes granddad too, or me and granddad, you know, we'd go down there and we would get out like 2 or 3 videos for the day, and one would be like a family movie we'd watch in the afternoon after having a Sunday lunch, and the other one would be something for me, typically something that my parents wouldn't let me see because it was a 15 or an 18, you know, it was certified too high. So my Sundays were kind of spent where the afternoon would be a movie like Ben-Hur. So this is always like comfort food for me. And then on the night, it will be Evil Dead 2 or whatever. But it's just it's like weird juxtaposition. But Ben-Hur is a movie I probably haven't even seen, you know, easily 20, 25 years. You know, and so I just didn't.
Saw this in the 90s. I think that's all.
I think it's been probably at least 20 years since I've seen this movie too.
Yeah. But I mean, that being said, it was a very pleasant surprise because while the chariot scene is so viscerally burnt into my brain because I still can't believe that they did that as a stunt. The rest of the stuff was like a very pleasant surprise. The dialogue, you know, the building up of the. And one thing I'll say is as well, if we're going to talk about Gladiator later on in the arc, Ben-Hur's DNA is all through fucking Gladiator. Yep. Like, obviously, you know, he's a dude who's successful, but then like some fucking wealthy Roman fucks him over.
He ends up enslaved.
Yeah, he ends up getting enslaved. He has
then he's put into the slavery and entertainment industry in Rome.
Yeah.
Which,
by the way, it's even the same actual like spiritual style, because the premise of this movie, which is very similar to Gladiator, is the idea that there are honorable men in the world, and if you behave in an honorable manner, they will like mirror that behavior reciprocated back to you, and that's how you can climb. By the way, you notice these films on some fucked up level are almost some sort of like statement about merit or something. The idea that like if you actually are like that sick, you could sort of like get back to where you were, even though in theory in this you've been the equivalent of cast into the Bane pit that you're never supposed to return.
Well, it's why Pontius Pilate actually, but Pontius Pilate is usually portrayed as like sort of a sneering. You know, like cinema, obviously. By the way,
that's the one aspect.
Christ to death.
That's the one aspect that I didn't totally was able to go along with, is the Pontius Pilate part. Because as soon as the guy's like, "Hey, I'm Pontius Pilate," well, I already know what you're gonna like crowbar in, like you're gonna like allude to Jesus or something about. You're one of the only Jew leader guys I've ever met. So you're gonna do that thing where, like, at the end, it's gonna be like, one day maybe they will tell your story. Ben-Hur, you know, like he could have just done that actor. That's the only part that they did lay on a bit thick was the Pontius Pilate character. He had a lot of dialogue in this film too.
I will loop that idea back of, you know, the idea that your personal character accumulates is the accumulation of your your honor and your representation in society, because that does loop back to esports, which is that concept in Rome, which was your reputation was called dignitas, and it was extremely important in ancient Rome, and that's where the esports team, obviously dignitas, gets its name.
The irony being they have no reputation and never had any. In some ways,
of course,
the longer that their career goes on, the less reputable they become. Money. So in some ways, they're sort of fucking that one up. Some would say.
But the
some would say, believe it or not, Monty, no one's ever made this statement before, but some would say Dignitas the org isn't living up to the Dignitas name. But only in that context, only in that really specific context, Monty, not in any other context.
But it was kind of like your social influence or your social status, and that was derived from your like personal integrity and prestige, right? Which was won through your kind of honor, basically, right? And your honorable acts and your strength of character. So it's actually a very cool concept, and it was really important in Rome.
Well, that's what I love about it, though. It's like that Pontius Pilate presents to him, I think, an actual reasonable proposition, which is at the end, obviously they say to Ben-Hur, because of your affiliation to your adopted father Arius, you can be a Roman citizen now. Which, by the way, if that sounds like a throwaway thing, like you just get a piece of paper, you sort of also have to understand what being a citizen of Rome actually meant. It meant you weren't a serf, you weren't a peasant. It was essentially the gateway to nobility. Being a citizen meant you at least controlled your destiny, your future. You had rights that the working class of Rome wouldn't.
Also,
the plebeians.
It's very crucial to note that in terms of Roman citizenship, one of the things that Rome imparted to the modern world, and one of the most important changes that they made, was that anybody could potentially become a Roman citizen. Like Rome was itself a hodgepodge of all these things. So if you became, anybody could become a Roman citizen, which is wild because any human civilization before that, if you weren't born there, you were not given the same rights, right? And even many civilizations post-Rome as well.
It'll probably be lost on a lot of people who watch this because we think of adoption as like this kind of, we're thinking about in the modern Western context. But in ancient Rome, people just adopted all the time. The nobility.
That's how the emperors often gave succession.
Tiberius,
it wasn't their own children. It was the people that were adopted.
Was adopted by
Augustus.
Augustus Octavian. Yeah. So I mean, so anyway. Pontius Pilate says to him, he says like, "Oh, good news from Rome." I don't know why I'm doing a phone. They definitely didn't have that anachronism in, but anyway,
all right,
good news from Rome.
Just calling up to let you know. Good news from Rome.
Good news from Rome.
You've been approved on your citizenship. V1.
Yeah, exactly. Arius has finagled it, so you will now be a citizen. And he says, I'm not going to accept it. And he says why, and he talks about like how Massala got corrupted by Roman power. And Pontius Pilate says, and I've got it here: where there is greatness, great government or power, even great feeling or compassion, error is also great. We progress and mature by fault, but Rome has said she is ready to join your life to hers in a great future. And then Ben-Hur goes, but there are other voices. And Pontius Pilate says, the voice, for instance, of Arius, your adopted father, waiting for you in Rome. He would tell you, if I may speak in his place, not to crucify yourself on a shadow such as old resentment or impossible loyalties. Perfect freedom has no existence. A grown man knows the world he lives in, and for the present, the world is Rome. Young Arius, I am sure, will choose it. And so it's like, listen, we know we're arseholes. We know what happened to you getting wrecked by Massala, who, by the way, is now dead and dies horrifically, and your family becoming lepers. Yeah, our bad, but we can fix it, if you come and you do this. And, like, which society is perfect? But bloody Judah Ben-Hur slaps it out their hand so we can go and watch Jesus get crucified.
The grown man knows the world he lives in, and for the present, the world is Rome. Young Arius, I am sure, will choose it.
I am Judah Ben-Hur.
Right. So, I mean,
just as a historical
I like that
note,
shade of
quickly,
gray,
just a historical note, probably most of the Jewish leaders were actually Roman citizens, the Jewish leaders in Judea. That would not have been weird at the time. So it is, I think,
there's an obvious dual citizenship joke I could make here, but we'll just leave those after this one. You know, it's all good.
So basically, like, I don't think, you know, it is presented as this kind of poison chalice as it is, but I mean, there's obviously going to be a lot of historical inaccuracies in this film, but I just thought that was a particularly interesting
that was the other
contrast.
part of it as well, because early in the movie, the Roman centurions all talk about Tiberius as if he's a god, and I did a little bit of classics too at university. And I'm pretty sure that actually the Roman people by that time, even though Julius Caesar,
I think it was only the first few that they actually thought were God, wasn't it?
Well, yeah. So in terms of succession, it's Julius Caesar, as we said, Augustus, who rebranded as Octavian. Then it's Tiberius, right? So Tiberius, I don't think they would have been calling him like a god among men. The reason that Julius Caesar was deified was obviously, like, I mean, first of all, he was just fucking crazy and deliberately used to use propaganda and stuff to have himself adjacent to the pantheon of gods. Like, oh, I would never say I'm a god, but look, am I not descended from Romulus? All this shit, you know, classic strong man leader shit, you know, which we won't get into it. But you know, so he did all of that, and then there was that thing, wasn't it, where can't remember if it was Suetonius that wrote about it or not, but where the comet, like 2 years after he died, there was Caesar's comet or whatever the fuck it was called. Okay. And this is after they built a temple, because Octavian, who was, again, Julius Caesar's adopted kid, Octavian recognized that if we deify Caesar, that's good for me as his successor, because then I get to say I've got divine blood within me. And so anyway, they did that with Caesar, and then I think there was like a comet was seen 2 years after they built this temple or whatever in the distance, and then they were like, "Oh, look at that! That's proof he's a god." And then they used it and stuff. But like, there's definitely some historical inaccuracies in it. But I mean, that's true of all of these historical epics.
The imperial cults were a big part of Rome, but I can't remember off the top of my head when they started exactly.
Yeah.
But the imperial godhood thing was very real, and they were treated as divine a lot of the time. But I don't know at which phase of the empire that.
Well, I mean, one of them, obviously, Monty, is like, obviously Augustus had like Virgil make the Aeneid to basically like imply like we're godlike,
exactly.
And we have to come back to like a fucking Aeneas, etc. So they did try to force that. I agree with you, though, Richard. Like, that's like a little bit. I think that is a little bit of an anachronism. Like, in that era, they wouldn't really do that the same way.
Yeah, because
by the way, there is actually a similar thing though. Early in the film, they do actually have a part where I think it might even is the Massala character who says something like, he has like a speech about how like basically like Romans, fate has chosen Rome to rule the world in some ways. Yes. Well, actually, a part people will probably miss on this film is, well, obviously later the Romans do also then take Christianity and do all that shit with it too. So in some ways, there's actually like a mirroring effect to like the beginning and the end of the film in that regard.
Yeah. I mean, like, that's a good point to sort of like, I think, jump off and just talk about the character Massala. He is fucking awesome. He might be the best thing in the film, actually.
Mega villainous, isn't it? By the way, I always think that's one aspect we people do wrong in the modern day is when you like over humanize the villain. Like, I actually like it when it's like this. They're just a pure villain. They're just like this. Actually, the funny thing is, Monty, the whole time I was watching this, I was also thinking that part, the revenge part, is so similar to the Count of Monte Cristo. Like the way that they make it so outrageous, like the righteous indignation you feel when they're fucking all his family over is so extreme. It gives the fuel for the film, basically. It justifies the whole film, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, to basically, because the mad thing is as well, it's like, right, you want to talk about being unlucky. Ben-Hur, one of the most unlucky motherfuckers. Like, I can talk.
Oh, by the way, you'll never go on a route ever near some tiles in your entire life after this film. You'll be like, whoa.
Goes up to a roof. Goes up to a roof to watch the fucking Roman procession. The day after, he's literally said to his old friend, who happens to be a Roman like governor or whatever.
Oh, by the way, this guy also, this motherfucker switches up like nothing, like a fucking people that's badly trained, bro. Yeah. One pro, he's like, oh, bro, love you, Jim. Yeah. He's like, Get your whole family in fucking prison. You're already got this guy's
yeah.
the biggest cunt of all time. He's outrageous.
Yeah, I know.
He's like, because you
like,
wouldn't help me like turn
I
in
know.
your people and
He's
become a rat.
outrageous. He's so spiteful. It's crazy.
Yeah. No, but I mean, it's like at the end, like well, sorry, not at the end, but rather before he goes to the galleys. That bit where he's like going, look, okay, I'll take the blame for a roof tile killing a Roman governor or whatever. I'll take the blame for that. But please just spare my family, I beg you. And he goes, beg? Did I not beg you for help?
Let them go. Please. Massala, I beg you.
Beg!
Didn't I beg you?
It's like, no, you actually didn't, mate. You just implied that because you're old school, for like old friends from back in the day. He owes you total fealty, even though you're Roman and he isn't.
Yes.
So like, but I had to beg. At no point did you beg, bro. Like, at no point did you didn't press him at all. Actually, it was like 1 minute you're throwing javelins.
This motherfucker's hero 60 so hard, doesn't he? He just goes from like he's mildly slighted by you. By the way, not even. You're actually very politely sort of say, I can't do that. It's morally wrong for me. They just say, right, your whole family in prison, then you fucking rat.
Also as well though, bro. Like, just while we're here, because I don't know where else it'll fit in. I did fucking laugh out loud, right? When when Ben-Hur's come back and worked his way back up through the echelons, he's a chariot racer, and he wants to find out where his like mother and sister are. And they go, "Oh, we've just been keeping them in this room down here. We know they're still alive because the food disappears, but you never open the door, right?" And he just opens the door, and he just goes, "Lepers!" Like,
I know. It's so over the top. It's so over the top,
bro. I was fucking crying with laughing. Like, I was just like, if ever there's a metaphor for esports, it's just that. Just opening the door. I wonder what's going on over here.
The analogy there is, it's like when there's a drama and you look in the reply section on Twitter. It's like, I'm looking at lepers. Oh my God.
Exactly. Yeah.
Burn a whole.
Just opening Twitter every day. But anyway,
more seriously though, that's another thing about this film that they do really well. They, even when you think, like, if someone's never seen this film, you're going to think when he returns from the galleys thing and he's a hero and he's trying to find his family, you're going to think, right, well, this movie's probably got, half an hour left in it. It's going to wrap up. He's going to find his family. He's going to beat the guy. No, they torture you even more, because how heartbreaking is the thing where not only do they have leprosy, but then they do that thing where they make like the fucking his wife promise to say they're dead. That's fucking heartbreaking, bro. That tortures you, that scene.
On your love for him, you will never tell him you've seen us. Let him remember us as we were.
I promise you.
I'm content.
Yeah, that is a bad one. That is a BG.
Ruthless, isn't
like,
it?
he's all geared up, thinking he's going to see them again, or at least find out if they're dead, so he can move on with his life and focus on revenge against Massala. And they're there like, no, don't look at me, but don't tell him I'm alive. We're going to the Valley of the Lepers.
Oh, that's hilarious in itself. I know. By the way, first things first, Richard, sidebar. The second you say that on film, then I want to go pause. You did after this make a 6-second film called Valley of the Lepers, right? Please tell me there is a Valley of the Lepers. Like, what? That's just an idea you threw out there. Are you out of your mind, sir? The film Valley of the Lepers is right there. By the way, that's going to be an amazing scene already. I can already imagine. First of all, Valley. Why are you in valleys? That's where winds blow really harshly through things, bro. You're lepers. I'd stay out of the wind. You know, I'd maybe stay in the forest or something like. Bro, I want to see that. That's the horror film from the 70s I didn't get to see. Valley of the Lepers.
The thing is, as well, though, I used to use this, like, you know, when you, I used to
and
use
it has
this,
a werewolf break at the end. Which one of the lepers is a werewolf?
A leper break, mate. I used to use this as a metaphor. I would like I'm slipping to an article. Like, if somebody had like let nerves or pressure get to them, I used to say it gone to pieces faster than a leper in a wind tunnel, right?
You made my joke. Damn it. I was about to say, I saw that film, but it really fell apart in the end.
Not bad. You know, listen. We've all been there. What you call a leper in the bath? porridge. These are probably cancellation-worthy jokes in this day and age. Look, how dare they be an ableist? The anti. Surely we could do leper jokes. Surely still. But anyway, you are right, Duncan. The idea that first of all they're like, no, we're going to the valley of the lepers. Well, that's wicked. You got a place for it, have you? And then on top of that, like you said, why a valley? Just like surely. What about the behind a mountain shelter of the lepers? How about that? The very delicate, no strong winds, loud noises of the lepers. Can you go there, please? No.
So am I the only one when you're watching this film? You're like, right, let me just establish again. This is a film about Jesus. Yeah. Of course. Right. So in that case, if any characters were to get, I don't know, a very specific disease like leprosy, no problem, because Jesus, quite famous for healing leprosy, isn't he? Yeah. So he probably just does that at the end, right? Well, why would he do that for him? Well, I mean, I've just said, like, he is famous for healing leprosy. Well, yeah, but this is about Ben-Hur. Like, what? Why is that part? That's a weird element. I just thought that was coming along. Come on, it was obvious. Have Jesus walk up, he's touching people, he's healing motherfuckers.
That's the other thing as well. It was like, I just thought, right, like, what would have happened is, like, Jesus would just go to the leper colony, because he did do a lot of that, didn't he?
Yeah,
but
he could heal them all.
He literally, well, quite
this
famously,
is a joke, Richard. Obviously, this is an incredible. I've just realised now. This is actually also literally a blasphemous episode, technically, depending on what you believe. So this is a pure joke about a character fictionally called Jesus, not the real one. But obviously, the joke is he was going to go. He was literally on his way to the Valley of the Lepers, Richard. But he thought, you know what? I'll just pop a bet in on that Massala guy. He's sick at racing, lost it all. You know what? Fuck that Ben-Hur guy. He is outrageous. My guy even had fucking like blades on his things. That's rigged. That sport is. I'm out of the betting game. At that point, Jesus exited the betting game. He said, "You know what? I'm not betting on. The only thing I'm betting on is eternal life, if you believe in me. Yeah. But aside from that, and that's guaranteed. So that's not even a gamble, guys. Anyway, if you can now use the code for 50% off a Bible and a 3-month course with 2 extra months if you enjoy Jesus.
Yeah. I mean, listen.
By the way, low-key, I would love it if we actually did get sponsored by some like mad fucking like boomer fucking Christian guy in America who's just rich, who just paid us to do Jesus commercial. Like, guys, have you lost your way in esports? Do you feel like you're spiritually a leper in the esports space? How about Jesus? He's there for you. He's reliable. He's like Faker. He just keeps coming back year after year. You think he's dead. There you go. He's back again to be the best. In many ways, the Faker of spirituality. 1-800 Jesus lives. I'm ready. I'm queued up.
No, I can tell. No,
is any evangelical Christians want to sponsor this show? Hit me up.
We'll just start our own LFN Bibles, you know.
By the way, you do realize, Monty, that is essentially we've actually accidentally backdoored into what all the lunatics think the whole premise of LFN is, which is it is just going to be like, here we have LFN Bible stories, right-wing Bible stories with Dorian. That's what they think Last Nation is anyway.
All of a sudden, we're just filming them in a compound.
I know.
all of our backgrounds have changed.
Exactly.
Mysteriously, like.
Exactly. Well, you know what?
They've all got uniform backgrounds now.
As we learned from esports, preparation is essential, Monty, to success.
Now, Jesus was never caught without iodine pills.
Exactly.
Except that one time.
And boy, did he regret it.
Anyway, no. So back to the film. I'll say as well, when he does get took to the galleys, the galley scenes are fucking straight fire as well. Banger, they look great. You know, like you'll see sometimes in when they do that, like, you know, you're on the ships and everyone's got a row and chest off and you got the guy and the drums and all that stuff and the whips. You know, like some people will cheap out on that. Like there was fucking loads of dudes on them oars. Yeah. There's like even inside of a boat, the scale of the human misery is so apparent that it's just. I love the whole galley segment actually.
I also love the vibe he has in it, where the whole thing is he isn't even talking shit. He's just mean mugging that main Roman guy, like. Yeah, I'm gonna row extra hard. Look at this. I'm rowing while looking at you, motherfucker. And somehow that actually like psychologically like wins that guy over. They're like, oh my god, he's there's something about that one slave. But that's why I also love that you are vibrant. It has like for real. I'm not even. This is gonna sound like such outrageous like reference. It is like the feeling of Neo in the Matrix. Like this is the dude. He's him. He's him. There you go, Zoomers. You will watch this and go, he is him. But then again, technically that applies to every male character in every film ever, but don't worry about it.
That's pretty much what Quintus Arius says, isn't it? He said, you could have killed me 41, but you didn't.
I also love that as well.
Why didn't you? Because I planned to live.
You could have killed me as I lay there. You're a condemned man, why didn't you?
I'm not ready to die.
What do you think will save you?
The God of my fathers.
I've just learned at this point, right? You just have to accept that the style of British actors is we don't learn the accents, you idiots. That's something an American would do, badly learn a South African accent somewhere. What we do is we just have like a British guy just go like, no there, Ben-Hur. You're fat. Like the most outrageous, like slightly upper class military type, because that guy's voice is perfect, but
they did that. They did that on purpose, apparently. So, like, you know how, like, Game of Thrones, or one of the things people will always say is, it's really clever how, like, they took people from the northeast of England and made them the North, and then they took people, all of that stuff. Well, they made the Romans have the British accents, essentially.
Oh, right. It works. It gives it, like, a formal feeling when that guy's talking, doesn't it? He has the swagger, for sure, yeah.
If you look at the cast, like, so obviously Quintus Arius was the fucking great Jack Hawkins. He was people probably can't comprehend this, but he was actually a big star for a very sort of brief period of time. They made naval movies like specifically for him. Like
he had the swag, didn't he? Like I said, the presence on camera,
And he's worked with all of the fucking greats down the years. I mean, I think he was like fucking like CBE or fucking MBE. Like he was like actually a big actor. Then you got the Massala guy. He's from Northern Ireland.
Oh, right.
The actor.
A strange accent, yeah.
Yeah. And his story is actually really sad. He died at 45. He would have had a much better career. But yeah, he had the Widowmaker heart attack at 45, playing golf, just dropped dead, boom, on the spot, gone. I mean, I will say he was a Scientologist at the end, I think maybe. I think he might have been involved in that, but
sadly didn't live long enough to work with Riot Games.
I mean,
that's a freebie.
He didn't go clear, mate. He went grey. So anyway, but I mean, he was in like a ton of big movies. He was in that Genghis Khan movie, Fantastic Voyage,
the John Wayne Genghis Khan movie.
Look, it was a big
the
movie.
Conqueror? Is that what it's called?
No, I think it's just called Genghis Khan's one I'm thinking of. He was in
okay.
It was like I don't know. It was the one with Omar Sharif. If you've ever seen it, but anyway, so he was like, I mean, I think he's the standout in this movie. I know Charlton Heston got an Oscar for his performance in this. Yep. That's nonsense. This might be. I mean, like, I want to just get this out the way as well. Cause we're kind of all over the place with this one. Like, whatever. It's a 3 hour, 40-minute movie, guys. Like, it would take the entire episode to even sum it up. But he's not very good in this film. Like, okay. So this is my thing with Charlton Heston. Charlton Heston is from the Clint Eastwood school of acting. And while Clint Eastwood definitely got better in his old age, very good at doing monologues and showing a more sensitive side of masculinity, like when he came back to do Unforgiven in the 90s and all that stuff. Classic Clint Eastwood, big muscular presence, really striking on screen, really intimidating, a strange hypnotic beauty about him, but also a real menace and threat. And when they deliver dialogue, they speak in sound bites. They don't do naturalistic dialogue. Like even in this movie, a movie full of dialogue, Charlton Heston, like whenever he speaks, it's a sound bite essentially. And so I've never thought Charlton Heston was like a particularly good actor, which isn't to say he's not been in a bunch of movies that I love, because he has been. You know, fucking Planet of the Apes, for starters, is just a fucking mega movie that actually it's been memed on. It's another Simpsons problem, I guess. Like, after Stop the Planet of the Apes, I Want to Get Off, the musical. After I Love You, Dr. Zaius, you can't really watch that movie.
That is one of my
favorite.
favorites.
Zaius in League of Legends, I always think of that Monty, that exact fucking song.
Yeah, well, that's what Thorin. That's what I play on my stream when we talk about Zaius and the Dr. Zaius moment. But honestly,
that is iconic.
That part, the Simpsons about the musical Planet of the Apes actually just foreshadowed all of the garbage that would consume musical theater, which is actually crazy.
Bro, I remember making a joke with my friends when we were pissed up one time, because I was talking about this slew of like musicals that were coming out. How they were like making musicals of like just movies, like
Green Day, or Mamma Mia with ABBA and everything like that.
It was something like Reanimator, the musical, had set me off, and then I was like, well, imagine if they did a Conan the Barbarian, the musical, Tree of Woe, like just pissed talking bollocks. They did that. There is a fucking Conan the Barbarian the musical. It's like, what's happening? Stop this. Stop.
But honestly, like, I know this is just a complete sidebar because we were talking about The Simpsons, but that series of jokes within like a 2-minute period is so
might be the best thing
funny.
they ever did. Like, no joke, actually. Might be the best thing they ever wrote. It's so good. It's so well observed. And actually, the song itself is really funny as well.
Yeah.
Like, which I don't usually think that.
Can I play the piano anymore? Well, of course you can. Yeah. Well, I couldn't before. It's so fucking stupid. It's great.
Yeah, it's great. But anyway, so I've never really liked. I wouldn't say, like, if you were to say, "Oh, Richard, like, name all your favorite male leads," like we'd be talking for some time before we got round to talking about Charlton Heston. But I will say this. I mean, like, in terms of the standout performances in this film, I mean, Heston might not even be top 5. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like, Stephen Boyd as Massala is the fucking absolute standout for me.
Your gift is exquisitely appropriate, young Arius. Do you suggest I use it on myself?
Then you've got Hugh Griffith, the Welsh boy, happy to don the racist makeup, but he's great.
It's not like I understand it doesn't age well, but he's not playing he's not offensive within the film. His character is actually really cool. He's a really fun character.
One thing I will say is as well. I mean, yes, this is a very, dare I say, progressive vision of that time, where it didn't present the Romans as particularly cruel or evil.
Technically, neither does the Bible. I'm just going to put that out there.
Right. It obviously, the hero is Jewish, a Jewish man on a road to salvation via finding the teachings of Christ, and then Sheikh Ilderim, which is the horse breeder and chariot racer. He's like a really wily, smart guy who plays the fucking Romans at their own game, but he's like really, really kind. And, like, by the way, this is a thing about that, Arabic culture, obviously, the hospitality is a big part of their culture, and it's sort of nice to see it presented as like, you will absolutely have a slap up dinner on me. The comments about having multiple wives maybe aren't going to go over too well with everybody watching it, but listen, horses for courses, you might say.
Also, in that period, that was just common for not just Arabic people.
Yes. Believe me, my friend, it is a great advantage of many wives.
Someday I hope to have one.
One wife! One God, that I can understand, but one wife, that is not civilized. It is not generous.
Yeah, and also, one of the things I like about the performance is Hugh Griffith, again, I'm not doing the accent. That would be ridiculous. He's just Welsh as fuck. He's Welsh as fuck. You hear it straight away. come into my tent. I fucking I got some fucking dates by here. I have, but it's fucking straight on.
I mean, what is outrageous is like Omar Sharif is literally just around during the period that this movie is made. But you know, even when Omar Sharif was breaking into Hollywood earlier on, even when we get to Lawrence of Arabia, right, which he is in, he's not even playing the main Middle Eastern guy in that movie because that's played by Alec Guinness, right?
Is in some ways this film was the precursor to the 13th Warrior.
What I'll say is though, if one thing that definitely has to be a callback to Hugh Griffith's performance is obviously John Rhys Davies in Indiana Jones playing Salah. I immediately saw aspects of that, right? You know, a Welsh guy, you know, playing someone from that part of the world. But yeah, I mean, also very, very good. I mean, like one of the better performances in the movie. Obviously, won an Academy Award. I think he was only the second Welsh person to have ever won an Academy Award at that time period. And I thought he was really good. Jack Hawkins is Quintus Arius. He's not in it much, but he has that gravitas, doesn't he? You know, and it's like you get Ben-Hur, and Charlton Heston looks good. Although
by the way, one thing in this film as well, because obviously this is a color film, it's 1959. Like his eyes are piercing blue, bro. They actually come off the screen, aren't they?
If that is the choice, then I am against you.
Yeah.
The other person that reminds me of is Paul Newman. Paul Newman has a famously iconic eyes when they're in color. That's just different from when it was black and white, you know.
But I don't know who did the coloring for this movie. I didn't look at the end on the titles, mate. The palette,
the reds in this are so rich. It looks so good.
Which is exactly what you would want, right? Because obviously, when you do a lot of these like desert movies, you've got that incredibly bright, scorching sun that bleaches out everything. And you know, these Roman centurions, this oppressive force in this part of the world, just their blood red. I mean, so vivid, and it looks beautiful. I mean, like right from the get-go, I was like, holy shit, this movie, like, its looks hold up. And then as you start seeing these insane sets that, you know, every single one of them built to scale, you're like, this is wild. This is like, when you hear the term Hollywood excess, you probably think of like bad things, failed movies, Waterworld, right? But sometimes Hollywood excess could birth just amazing things. Like, you know, this movie, the sheer audacity of some of the stuff it does, like building a 10 by 10 block set, which is to scale of what is actually there was there in Jerusalem. It's like, it's just a movie, bro. You know what I mean? You are aware this is just a movie, and if you just did a close-up, you could probably like get away with it and no one would say anything. Nah, fuck that. Let's build the real thing. Fuck it.
I mean, they did that. You know what's funny is like, I think the scale of Rome just inspires people, because Rome, the TV show, was also famous for like building these insane sets, including like a Senate that was 2/3 the size of the real Senate. I mean, by the way, Rome is a fucking awesome show on HBO, and if you haven't seen that, please go watch it. It's wonderful. But it's this, you get the same feeling from Rome that you get, you know, from this show or from this film as well. I do want to go back to Charlton Heston just briefly, because I
just don't think he was very good in it. I mean, that's
the thing is like, even in the moments where it's supposed to be tender, where he's with Esther and there's this romance going on, he just feels kind of like a passenger in these scenes, and it's a little weird. It's a little weird.
Well, when I was reading the notes on the show on the film as well, there was a bit where apparently, right, so when Massala dies, right, and by the way, mate, the best part of the film, hands down, right? So just for context, spoilers coming up, spoilers to Ben-Hur. I'm actually doing that, spoilers, right? If you haven't watched the movie, right? He beats him in the chariot race. Doesn't just beat him. He gets fucking mullered by them horses. By the way, Shout out to that stuntman one time who did that. I still can't believe that no one died on this. I think that might be a psyop. I'd be astounded because it looked like people were just getting smacked by horses and chariots and walls the whole time. But anyway, he gets trampled, every bone in his body broken. He's having seizures. He's fucked. Anyway, he's on his deathbed. All the doctors are around him going, we must operate now or you are 100% going to die. It's going to be touch and go anyways it is. And he's going, no, he will come. He will turn up. And he's just like literally clinging on to life in intense pain, seizing out, right? Because he just wants to rub in his face that his family is still alive. This is his whole last moment on Earth, right?
That's how evil this guy is.
Just
the
to be
commitment
spiteful.
to the bit is so nuts.
It's great. And like, he's even saying to the doctor, right? He's going, look, we'll just start with the legs. He's going, I will not receive him as half a man. Oh, brilliant.
If you wish us to keep you alive, we have to go to work now, Tribune. Do you understand?
Take the legs off me. Not yet. Not till I've seen him. I don't receive him with half a body.
Love it. Fucking into my veins.
By the way, what I love about that as well is they've taken like the premise that apparently people say it does exist in real life, where like, you know, sometimes an elderly relative can hang on to like tell you like a positive message, like, you know, like I forgive you or something. Like they take that, but they invert it like this whole
version of that.
Spite alone kept this fucker like hanging on, be like, I must actually crush his spirit. It's brilliant. I love it.
Charlton Heston comes in and says, I don't see an enemy, right? And like, you know, anyway, but he hasn't forgiven him. He just says that. And that it's so, because he's so pathetic, essentially, is meant to be the tone. And then he goes, yes, but the race goes on. The race goes on, man. The race goes on, Ben-Hur. Your family is still alive. And then he like dies.
It isn't over, Judah. They're not dead. Where are they? The race is not over.
Well, apparently in that scene, right, the script called for Charlton Heston to like just be almost like contemptuously indifferent, but Charlton Heston couldn't deliver that. They did take after take, and he just couldn't be indifferent. He couldn't find what indifference would look like from a position of acting. So what you get is what's in there, which is, I think a lot of people misread it. I think probably, like, the point is he definitely hasn't forgiven him. But he just like, but it's just like, I'm absolutely I have done you here. Like, you are you've lost it all, like quite literally. But then like him having this one little ace up his sleeve, and like then obviously you see the anguish.
But I will say as well,
if
people know Charlton Heston from other films, he also does do that exact same like Obama-esque way of like slowly talking where the sentences are broken up. As it's like he does that in every film. He does it in this one too. Like he doesn't change his style at all in that regard.
I love you, Dr. Zayas.
People like him, unironically, Richard, must actually have thought acting is a piece of piss. They're just going, you put a cowboy hat on me, I'm a cowboy. You put a thing on me, I'm a Roman. Yeah, and I love him. I love people like that. Like it's I always say one of my favorite examples of this is Sean Connery. I just love the idea Sean Connery had so much swag. He was like, yeah, fuck it. I am actually just going to do a Scottish accent as every possible character that isn't even vaguely Scottish. I don't care. I'm just listen, if you don't like it, get the fuck out the cinema. I love it. Straight fire.
Yeah. But yeah, Heston. I mean, that is an archetype of actor, right? It's the actor where they just look so good, and they just have a presence, and they're muscular. You can believe. You know, Charlton Heston, by the way, he rode them fucking chariots. You know what I mean? Like,
the actors did actually. A lot of those shots were not stuntmen; they were like actually the actors on the chariots, which is pretty impressive.
Apparently, he learned how to do it on the Ten Commandments, which is the big epic he did before this, where he played Moses, because he just played everyone in history. This guy, I'm amazed, by the way. Like, he didn't turn
quintessential Jewish character actor, Charlton Heston, and also
exactly.
Honorary Mexican for A Touch of Evil, which we did, guys. If you want to see Charlton Heston playing a Mexican detective or a Mexican police officer, just go watch Touch of Evil that we did.
He obviously saw that Welsh actor and he goes, "Let me have a go at that." And he goes, "What shade are you using?" It's outrageous.
Exactly. So I mean, but unironically, Touch of Evil might be one of his best performances in his career, because he wasn't an actor that had a lot of nuance about them.
Yes.
But as I say, he is so resplendent and radiant, and he's got that straw-colored hair and the massive teeth and the piercing blue eyes that, you know, you kind of can't take your eyes off him, which I get. But back to the point, an Oscar for this is a travesty. Like, it must be one of the worst performances. I don't know, look it up, actually. I didn't do it before.
I want to know who else was nominated,
yeah,
actually.
exactly. Yeah, here we go. Best Actor, Oscars, 1959. Let's see.
Well, I'm going to it now.
Yeah, let's have a look. Best Actor. Right, so who was nominated?
All right, so it was Lawrence Harvey for Room at the Top, Jack Lemmon in Some Like It Hot, Paul Mooney in The Last Angry Man, and James Stewart in Anatomy of a Murder.
I mean, Anatomy of a Murder is a fucking banger. That's a banger film. But I guess, obviously, James Stewart, like, he just gets all the Oscars and awards and accolades, doesn't he? So they probably thought now was, like, the time to give it to Heston. But there's no way he should have had it on like this performance alone. As I said, I don't think he's the best thing in the movie. I think you know, you think about some of the other performances that like really hold it together. Even like, I mean, that's the other thing as well. Like, no one's really in the movie for long. Like, if you think about the length of the other parts and how much, like, it's pretty much Massala's like next after Ben-Hur, and then, you know, you got a few little other bits and pieces here. It's not that kind of movie, which is fine. I mean, like, it's probably just far removed from modern sensibilities, but this is not an intimate portrayal or look at the emotional and spiritual journey of Ben-Hur.
As well. To me, this isn't really a film about characters. This is like almost mythological itself. Like, I mean, obviously, but like even the story of Ben-Hur doesn't, to me, read like it's supposed to be a literal historical thing that this all happened. To me, like even the aspect, like Monty, it's so ridiculously over the top. Like, he's on fucking white horses and the bad guy's on black horses for fuck. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I say the whole hubris of the Roman guy going, I guess the fates chose us to rule the world, as a guy who's like rocking up from like Judea, who's going to meet Jesus.
It's not very subtle, is it?
No, but it works. Like mythology, it works though. You're supposed to paint with these big, bold colors, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind it because, you know, it is what it is on face value. There's not any depth here. It is a representation. You know, it's supposed to be this larger than life celebration of this era in history and the story of Jesus and life at the time, right? And it does. Look, it includes a lot of things that were true at the time. Was everybody a slave? Yes, they were. That's just the classical world, right? When shit went bad for you, did it go really bad? Yes. I mean, look at war practices at the time. You better hope that your city didn't get sacked, because what happens is all the men are killed, everybody's raped and enslaved, period. That's what happened, guys, and your whole city's fucking burnt to the ground and looted. It wasn't a fun time to be alive for the most part. And honestly,
well, there's that famous thing, a lot of people don't know that, like, supposedly the Germans, when the Romans would attack, would just like kill their own kids and stuff if they knew they would lose the battle, like, because they were like, yeah, we don't want to be slaves forevermore. Yeah,
I mean, and honestly, like, being part of, you know, being under the aegis of Rome was a protection in many ways. You know, life was probably way worse outside the empire. Sure. At least in Rome, as we said before, you had the opportunity to become a citizen at a certain point in time, right? And, you know, if you signed up and became, you know, part of the legions, you could get free land upon your tour of duty that you concluded, and you could move into farming. Like, there were very, very real benefits for people who were part of the Roman Empire and who wanted to participate in that system. And it, you know, they literally would give citizenship to anybody regardless of your origin of birth. That wasn't a factor, and that was and still is in many ways a very modern way of thinking. Now, clearly there were downsides. Obviously, we can talk about if there were insurrections. What did the Romans like to do? Oh, right, crucify thousands of people. That was kind of their jam, right?
Yep. Yeah, I've always wondered about that. Like where crucifixion's such a mad specific way to fucking kill someone.
That's just how they did it, man.
Yeah, like where
it's just how they like to execute people. I don't know.
Yeah, but
it's fucked up. It's really fucked up.
Think about what's popular at the time. Like, you know, it's like, oh, we chuck you off a building, chop your head off. run you through with swords. We put two horses and just rip you apart in the middle. But you've got plenty of methods, like that range from quick to cruel. And then some guy went, listen, right? You beat them through the streets carrying a massive plank of wood. Then, when they're exhausted, you nail them to the wood. You put the wood up, you bury it, stick it down, and you just leave them up there until they
it's
die
terrifying,
from thirst.
right? It's terrifying.
Fuck that.
And I think a lot of people, even Christians today, obviously we think about Jesus when we thought about crucifixion, but Jesus was one of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people, or maybe millions of people over the course of the Roman Empire that was killed via crucifixion.
As you'll see in Spartacus, of course.
Yeah, I mean, no joke. This happened in Judea when there were revolts. They would just take thousands of people and just industrial murder them and make fields of these crosses. But Richard, to answer your question, it's just, who's going to rebel again after that, dude? That is terrifying. That is terrifying.
Because you're just up there as well, and they don't seem to care. They're like, no one will take you down. Everyone's too scared. And if we catch anyone, like giving you water or sustenance or anything like that, they're going up there right next to you. So it's just like, you're just walking down a road and, help me, help me. You're like, fuck me, man. It's wild as fuck. Don't get me wrong. Romans, they out there. They were wild. There was some wow.
By the way, two things. One, that's also why I said this film almost has like a confused cosmology. Because on the one hand, one aspect of the film is obviously like a Jewish myth of like a hero, a figure who has political implications and like, implications within their history of their nation. But what's bizarre is, if people don't know, to the modern day, a lot of Israeli people actually despise the idea of the Romans for exactly this reason, that like Titus and those people came and wrecked them, etc. And they do that thing where they hate that Arch of Titus or whatever. But if people don't know, actually the Christian interpretation of history in that era is that was God punishing them for not believing in the Messiah and having the revolts and stuff. Because remember, God's whole shit was render unto Caesar's things. So his idea back then was you had to sort of like accept this thing. So it's actually kind of a bizarre cosmology. And I'll even add in as well, another thing I thought was very mythological in this film is right towards the end, he literally prays to God for like essentially to get vengeance and to sort of be like God's executive justice, as it were, which is actually Samson-esque, if people think about that, Monty, when he's like right at the end and he just sort of like wants to just be the vessel for God in that sense.
God forgive me for seeking vengeance, but my path is set. Into your hands I commit my life. Do with me as you will.
Well, that's actually the aspect about this film I thought that also is very much of its age. This type of a narrative, if you did it as a real modern film, the corollary thought would obviously be you'd lose your faith in God, because think of what happened to you. It's some Job-esque shit, Monty. Like, your family's taken from you. You're never going to escape. You yourself are never going to escape. Even if you escape, your only way to escape in this scenario would be to kill someone and get revenge. Your life's over too. Everything's over. But he doesn't actually ever in this film, by the way, lose like his sort of like faith, as it were. He doesn't. And in fact, at the end, he even is still a religious guy who's asking God for help. So I also thought it was actually quite an affirming story in that sense too, because it's the opposite. It's not that because, you experience the slings and arrows, you go, well, fuck God, why did he do what I wanted? Like, you still have that like core belief thought. That's actually quite an inspiring film, I thought.
Just before we get into the chariot scene, which definitely deserves its own little bit of discussion, this shoot might be one of the most brutal I've like ever read about. So it was shot between May 18th, 1958 and finished January 7th, 1959.
Oh my God.
Right. Yeah. Yes. They were shooting 12 to 14 hours a day, 6 days a week. They had 2 units. And what they would do is, if you were an actor in this movie and you had scenes, you just had to be on standby if you were second unit. So basically, the women that play his sister and mother, they would just be sat there in Italy in the summer in full leprosy makeup, just in case if other scenes couldn't happen, second unit could do the leper scenes. That was how they were living, right? They were getting shot up by a doctor that said, "Come and get your vitamin B shots," and the director said, "I'm pretty sure they were giving everyone amphetamines." Like, this is fucking mental. Like, it's actually it's actually crazy. As I said, I think the producer died of a heart attack while he was there. Not to mention, I mean, like, according to one Pennsylvanian scholar, no one really knows. Like, there was 100 to 150 horses just killed in this movie, like, out of the 2,000 that they used across the whole film. It's just berserk, like, what they fucking put themselves through to get this movie up there. And this is what I mean about, like, Hollywood excess. Yeah, it's kind of gross. Like, I don't want horses to die on a movie. I like horses. Horses are wicked, but you know what I mean? But, like, look at the fucking state of Ben-Hur. Like, look at this film. It's like Duncan said. You wouldn't think to do any of this stuff now. You wouldn't say, oh, we're going to need about 2,000 horses for this movie. You go, let's get 5 horses, CGI them a little bit, change them in color correction, you know, whatever. Job's good, and CGI this, CGI that. There's a crowd. There's a green screen. And they don't feel the same. There's not, like, the weight or the profundity to what you're watching. Like, the chariot scene, like, man, I'd forgotten about that bit where they do the jump and he goes over the top. Bro, like, someone is really doing that. And even if they're not doing it at that speed, because some of the scenes you can see from the whipping motions on the horses, it is sped up in some points. Not many, though. But you're still galloping at horse
It's like the premise
speed.
of professional wrestling. There are certain moves that no matter, even if it was staged and you had a soft, like,
Exactly.
to do that move could kill you. Like, you're going upside down your neck, so, you know, like, I agree. I don't think people also realize how dangerous chariot riding is. Like, that's not the shit. If you crash, you're almost certainly dead, 100%. You might even kill a bunch of other people by crashing to their bloody chariot and then they go over. Like, it's mega dangerous, that kind of sport.
Yeah, and look, ancient Rome, let's not pretend that these were the most civilized sports, but just in terms of fucking entertainment, the Romans had basically the greatest entertainment of all time.
Oh, for sure.
The idea of bread and circuses, think about the things that they did to entertain people. Gladiator fights. Now, clearly gladiator fights in cinema are overplayed because they weren't killing them, because they were like they were like valuable WWE wrestlers, but it was way more dangerous than WWE, and they did kill them occasionally. But even things like flooding the Colosseum or staging fake naval battles, fighting wild animals. I mean, I love that one that they did.
Just bring in a lion and have him fight them.
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about? You know,
and the chariot races at, like, the Circus Maximus in Rome. I mean, this is outrageous entertainment.
Like, think, Monty, contrast our era, right? Bro, people won't remember this. 15 years ago, even the UFC was being discussed on, like, you know, major American news stations as, like, human cockfight. People were like, can we as a society endorse it? mate, people go mad over slap fighting. Monty, they would just, as you said, they would just bring in a bunch of crocodiles and have, like, a guy fighting with a spear or something. Like,
it's ridiculous.
Bro. Like, yeah, fuck it.
And nobody thought it was wrong. They were like,
what
if we added some tigers to the crocodile fight? Like, it was this whole shit was like the pinnacle of human excess, dude.
That's why I'm dreading Gladiator 2, because right, obviously, and this is historically accurate by all accounts. They did do that thing where they could put water in the Colosseum and have fake staged naval battles. Sure. But I don't know about them sharks, bro.
Not the sharks. No, that's ridiculous.
Like, why is that happening in the film then? Why?
Well,
why
and
put
also,
sharks there?
Look, I studied Latin. I studied Roman history. They did allegedly do that, but not at the time in which it happens in Gladiator 2, because once they installed all the trapdoors and stuff underneath the floor, they couldn't flood the Colosseum anymore.
Well, what would you do, though, if in Gladiator 2, in the scene with the sharks, he goes, we're going to need a bigger Colosseum or something?
Well, one of the reasons that I don't have high hopes for that movie is obviously it's all the member berries in the trailer, like strength and honor, and that you saying I will have my vengeance. And
by the way, am I the only one?
They're all saying the same lines.
Like, I actually think that is one of the worst things that they do in Hollywood is where it's
Yeah,
like you're not
like,
actually doing
why?
an homage or like a subtle thing. You just explicitly turn into the camera really awkwardly and saying like the title of the film or as you say
with a big
an
wink.
iconic line, exactly.
Yeah,
I
anyway.
like it when it's like, in like Die Hard 3, right? Die Hard with a Vengeance, right? In Die Hard 3, because it's Samuel L. Jackson and Bruce Willis that obviously worked together on Pulp Fiction, there's a line where he says, "Oh, what have you been doing?" And he goes, "Oh, nothing, just smoking cigarettes and watching Captain Kangaroo." But that's a reference to a song off the Pulp Fiction soundtrack. I like stuff like that. An Easter egg, right?
Cool.
Like, give me an Easter egg where you literally say verbatim the line from the previous movie in like a soft reboot or something, or you change the character who says it as a slide. Oh, stop with it, please, Hollywood, you're killing me. You're killing him, Hollywood.
They do that in the latest Alien movie too.
Yeah, I know. Well, yes, they do.
I bet they have them all. What you get an A from here, you bitch.
Yeah, you
I bet they have
that, that's in there. Yep.
Boss, you're gonna have it all, mate.
I'm afraid to inform you that is in there, Duncan. Yes.
And it's really terribly done too.
Yes. Yeah.
But anyway, back to the chariot race. Like, what's cool is if you know about Roman history, obviously this was something that would have been one of the great spectacles of the time. So for them to actually do this, and for them in the 50s to be riding around in cars trying to get this footage, just completely outrageous to think about. They had to build that whole fucking circus in order to do this in.
So the entire scene isn't even 10 minutes long in a 3-hour and 40-minute movie. It's the best thing in there. It's one of the best things to ever happen in cinema. But the chariot scene took them 3 months out of that arduous shoot. 3 months for the chariot scene. So it's mega.
Which in the end is probably 20 minutes of the film?
10. Less than 10.
Not much,
Less
is
than
it?
10.
That's another thing, by the way. In my brain, like a third of this movie was the charity race. I can't believe how short it actually is when you get there.
Yeah. Oh, mate. I mean, as I said, it's unbelievable. I mean, even remembering it as well as I did, I said this was very vivid in my brain. It still sort of like shocked me how well it held up. The stunt work, the choreography, the way it's shot. The sound design in the scene, because it's like just roaring, but yet somehow you can still hear the crowd, plus the individual squeals and the chafing of wood as they're getting super close to each other. It's really well done. I mean, it's like such high artistry the way this is put together, and also, of course, I believed the urban myth, which was that there's a stuntman gets killed in this, and they just left it in the film. That got debunked in 2005, apparently, when I was researching this, and it all stems from a misunderstanding from the 1925 version where someone did get killed during the chariot race. But anyway, how does that guy in the green who gets fucking annihilated? He gets fucking annihilated. The chariot just goes over him. How's he not dead?
Well, I think that's just a fake body, right? I think they do a cut there.
But he can't. But it's a dude. It's a dude. So wow. and if it's a cut, it's a hell of a cut. But when he's lying down, ducking, dodging, diving.
I mean, it is crazy to watch this.
Man.
Especially when the chariots are flipping and everything like that. It's wild.
Yeah. Well, that one definitely wasn't a dummy, because you see the guy. I mean, I read up on that. So the head stunt choreographer, that was his son in that scene, and he told him, right, when we do the jump and the chariot flips up, there's a chain on the side of the chariot. Just hold on, wrap your arm around that and hold on to that. And he instead instinctively grabbed the reins, and so he went over, and if he just wasn't so physically strong, he just dies. He's just dead. But he went over the top, was hung over and sort of pulled himself back up, because he just had insane core strength by being a stuntman. It's fucking hell. These guys really went for it, man, in this scene. I mean, put it this way, you can never imagine what it would be like to be there and see something like that for real. But I mean, this kind of is that. It kind of feels like that, It really doesn't. I'd be very hard pushed to kind of disseminate if you were to recreate it live or whatever. You know,
it's why I say the most
really exhilarating.
The most actually overrated thing about CGI isn't anything to do with the looks. It does look great, but you somehow part of your brain most of the time does know, like, nah, that's not real, though. You know what I mean? Whereas, like, when you film this, it's actually, we were referring to it earlier, but it's the same with all the films where you didn't have CGI. Like, if you've ever seen that, like, 1970s Napoleon film where there's, like, giant fucking battlefields of it. So just to see that film blows your mind. There's something incredible on screen about knowing there's that many actual people lined up in this way. It just has a special effect to me, ironically, outside of the graphical world, and you can sense it's real and authentic in a way.
I've always said, I mean, I think when you see like just good stunt work, it doesn't even matter how fantastical it is. You know, like when you watch like a fucking, Crouching Tiger, fucking Hidden Dragon, right, with the wire work there. It's that scene when they're up on the trees. It's total bollocks, but they are still up there with wires.
Yeah,
and it looks so good. It's like your brain is like really blown away by that. But then obviously the soft reboot, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon 2, Tiger Boogaloo, it's all CGI, and you're like, yeah, it looks good, but it just doesn't have the same impact. And as I said, the great thing about this period of movies were it was just literally like, oh, let's just do it. What do you mean? No, let's just do it. Let's just do it. Let's just spend millions to do it, and then put it in the film. Oh, all right then, yeah, sounds good. Like I almost wish Hollywood could sort of go back to an era like this where it was like, it because think about the money they spend on Avengers or something like that, right? Some superhero cape slop, and it all of the money is spent on casting, but then the next expense is all the CGI, and it's just like whenever you watch the documentaries of like the making of Avengers Endgame, it just goes into a room and it's just like cubicles and everyone's like got a PC and it's just like you're working in a call center, and then and what do you do? Well, I'm one of the lead CGI people, and right here I'm rendering a scene. This is Thanos.
But the thing is that that's because a lot of this CG stuff has kind of replaced actual planning that you need in order to do these shows. I mean, the logistics behind making like something like Ben-Hur are outrageous. But if you can basically just use the magic eraser to fix all your problems and just figure it out later on, you don't have to spend so much time in pre-production or in actual production. You can just kind of, whip people in post-production to work 16-hour days at a computer until it's done. And it does make it very, I think, sad to watch. And also, by the way, that is something that was talked about when Villeneuve made Dune. Was one of the reasons why Dune actually looks good is because Villeneuve is much better at planning that shit than most other directors are. And the visual effects, like when I watch Dune, sure, it has CGI in it, but that CGI looks insane in that movie, and the art direction is much better. Whereas you look at a lot of Marvel stuff and it just looks like visual garbage. You know what I mean? Yeah. But the other problem is that when you see CGI, and look, there was a 2016, I think, Ben-Hur remake that was a horrible flop that I haven't seen. But I think that when you try and do the CGI, I haven't seen that chariot race, and maybe I should have watched it before this one to contrast it. But there's always going to be the impetus to do something more. Right, with that, it's like, oh, but what if these horses did a backflip and crashed out into another chariot? And it's like the drive to make it more and more epic, but in the end you end up losing the soul and like the tension of real danger in the scene. And I think that's what's so phenomenal about this chariot race is because it's real, it's 10 times more amazing, even if it's not as epic as we could make it with CGI, right?
Yeah. And also, I think just as well, in terms of the shift, I remember when CGI first started coming in, and people were using it the correct way, which was, look, we do practical effects, but...
It's like Jurassic Park.
Yeah, exactly. But we do practical effects, but where we need like something to have maybe a better looking texture or paper over a crack, or if there's a particular type of shot we can't get, we throw in a CGI shot. we're going to do it. I mean, for instance, I've talked about the Blob, the 80s remake of the Blob. It's all practical, and then I think there's like one dubious scene where it's they used a little bit of CGI because they couldn't get the Blob to do the thing they wanted it to do, and it really stands out, and it's really jarring. But I get it; you got to get the shot. You need it narratively or whatever. But then it was like your boy fucking George Lucas just shot a fucking trilogy of movies on a green screen. Because he was so fucking lazy.
Which is tragic because the original Star Wars effects were so good and they were all practical. Like, it's so frustrating.
And then after that, you just end up with, I mean, by the way, Star Wars is probably a way better example than the Marvel stuff, actually. The modern Star Wars movies is guilty of the same thing. You watch these huge, big battles, you're just not invested. There's no physicality to it. It
lacks weight.
Yeah, exactly. It lacks weight because it literally has none. And you watch something like this. Those chariots are smashing into each other. Those people are falling off those chariots. Those horses are taking a tumble. Right? Like it's all happening. And the way it's shot, the camera work to follow that, get all of this footage, as I said, 263 foot of film for every 1 foot of film used. They just kept those cameras rolling for like 3 months just to get this and make it look as good. And the difference, it's just night and day. It's night and day to a fucking CGI chase that you get in these movies. And it's really sad because there's no reason. I mean, it probably are a ton of laws, actually, because, like, health and safety, whatever. But, like, conceptually, there's no reason why.
Also, lawsuits of the people who would potentially die or get injured.
Yeah, I mean, listen, okay, in many ways, Hollywood has become a safer place, and we're all the worse for it. But no, I mean, they're like, it's just. I would just love a filmmaker to come along now and make a big epic movie, and it's not going to be Gladiator 2, by the way, guys, and just make a big movie, and there is no CGI. Like, you want to have a fight with a rhino? Give me a real fucking rhino, or fuck off with the rhino scene. That's where I'm at mentally, and this is what I love about coming back to this era of films, like when people just did do crazy shit. They did crazy shit. Also, another one I was thinking of when I was watching this, because it was another one I really liked when I was a kid, Vikings. With Kirk Douglas, when they just built longboats for a scene where they just dance on the oars and have a few drinks, and then it's like, we're using them longboats again? Nah, probably not. Fine. I love it. I love the ambition of films from this time period, and it's sorely missed. But yeah, like I said, I mean, for me, I had a great time rewatching it. It was a nice big bowl of comfort food. Did surprise me in a few ways also as well. Did you know, because again, I had to look this up, right? I was thinking, oh yeah, leprosy was bad and all that. You do realize that, like, it's not even that contagious.
No, it's not. You just had to get really unlucky. That's the problem.
Yeah, well, yeah, you have to have constant contact with their
and
fluids,
you have to be, I think,
like
genetically predisposed to getting it. To getting it.
There's like a ton of checks and balances. Like, just don't let the lepers spit in your eyes, and you should be all right by and large. They're just packing them off to the Valley of the Lepers, Addy. That doesn't seem fucking. That's a bit unreasonable. Like, but I liked it. I liked the lepers. I liked the Jesus Riz. It was lots to this movie. It was not as good as I remembered it in my brain, for sure. But definitely one of those movies you have to watch once in your life, I would say.
I didn't even mind the weakness of the storytelling because it just is what it is on its face, and what you're there for is just the amazing shots, the incredible sets, the feeling of the atmosphere. Right? It feels like you're there. It's wonderful in that way, and I think it's that weight and the scope that you really come to appreciate about this movie. Any
Definitely
final thoughts,
not the performances? Yeah, Duncan. Anything from you?
I mean, I would just say I actually think this is quite a unique film in the sense that, as I say, I didn't really even view it from like a normal film lens. Like, I wasn't thinking about the plot or like, do I like this character? I just find this movie is one of those ones where In a way, it almost does feel like you actually are watching like a historical event. That's like it's the experience aspect of it. Like it's actually, I agree as well. I mean, we highlighted a lot of reasons why it's like significant in film history. But if you even just delete all that and just view it as a piece of entertainment, it's actually quite compelling, yeah. And also, I think in some ways, in spite of some of the performances, I agree. I don't think this had that many like incredible individual performances or iconic things you remember in the same way. But that's why I think a lot of what we focused on here is just what you get to experience on the screen is kind of the reason to watch it. It's a once in a lifetime type experience as a film, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's like I say. I mean, it's really the one thing this definitely does is it imbues the sense of history around the text and the way it's been adapted through the ages. Like it was a very worthy successor. I mean, look, the reason the novel has the presentation it does, or rather the film has presentation it does, goes back to the novel, which is obviously it was written post-Civil War, right? So, oh, look, two people who used to be friends, like brothers, if you will, suddenly have really differing views on what the world order should look like, and they are going to end up fighting about it. But the fighting, it leads to horrible bitterness, and it does not nourish the soul. Forgiveness and healing is the way forward, guys. Am I right? So you can understand how the text would have been super popular at this particular time. Like, again, I was researching it. Apparently, like Ulysses S. Grant, when he got the copy of the book, he read it like cover to cover in like 30 hours, couldn't put it down. It was obviously very good for the soul of America. And then that like spins up into this idea about let's turn it into a spectacle. Let's make it theatrical. Let's do a live stage play where people can come enjoy that story. But also you get some wicked horse races and all this stuff. Then you adapt it into a silent movie, like they do in 25. And it's like, how do you follow in that legacy? Well, you follow in that legacy by doing one of the biggest scale spectacle movies Hollywood ever produced with the, again, I think it would be hard pushed to find a better example of an action scene in anything across the board. Like, I mean, this is art. This is action as art. It's stunts and choreography as art. It's a 3-month shoot for 10 minutes. It's so bonkers in its complexity.
In a racetrack they built for this.
Yes. Yeah, it's like, it's so wild, and yet it still has the little flourishes, like the way the guy runs onto the field at the end when the race is over and picks up a dead guy's helmet as a souvenir. That's just in there textually as like, a little bit of, it's not important. He's not important, but it's probably something that would happen. There's like an aspect of realism to it, even in this,
even when
Hollywood reality.
When Ben-Hur wins and they flood the stadium with all of the extras cheering for him. I mean, it just feels insanely
all of them real people, all of
Yeah.
them real people as well. It's like, it's just so good, and it's like, you have to. You have to sometimes just appreciate a movie, not for performance, not for story, not for like dialogue or any of that stuff, but just for the art of film making in and of itself and all of the production that goes into something of this scale. And the movies around this time period, the great thing is, it was almost like they were trying to like one up each other. This film being a critical success, it won 11 Oscars. It's tied for the most Oscars of any movie with Titanic and Lord of the Rings, which I would say are really good modern analogs to something like this. Yeah. It's like that is the type of scale movie that should be winning a bunch of awards for it. Now, the acting obviously is dubious. But I'm all in, and like I say, you think about Antony and Cleopatra, all these other movies that came out, in the wake of this. I'm sure Ben-Hur was hugely influential. It's one of Akira Kurosawa's top movies. He loved it. So yeah, it might be, you might never watch it again, guys. You might not like a 3-hour, 40-minute historical epic that really has 2 big set pieces and a bunch of talking with Jesus at either end of it. Might not be something you recommend to your friends and family.
But you will watch that YouTube video of the chariot scene again. You will watch that
exactly.
again.
You will be like, that was fucking fire. So we've got you there.
All right, guys. That'll do it for Ben-Hur. We'll be talking about Spartacus next week. See you then.